Hi, everybody. Welcome to Drag Racing's Golden Era. My name is Randy. I am the editor-in-chief here, and once again, we have a real special treat for you. We've got probably one of the most influential guys to come out of Southern California drag racing. Rich Guasco is going to join us in just a second. Creator of Pure Hell, one of the most famous altereds in the world. So I'm not going to talk anymore. We'll bring Rich on right now. Hi, Rich. We're really glad you're here. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I just told you off camera here that I talked to Steve Gibbs earlier this week about you coming on, and boy, I tell you, that man thinks the world of you. He said you're one of the toughest hombres he's ever met.
Yeah, I've been around the block a few times.
Well, to get this thing rolling, why don't you tell me about where your love of hot rods and street rods and all that started? When did that all happen for you?
Well, my dad owned a wrecking yard, and I would go in the backyard when I was small and go through the cars and pretend I was driving and stuff. And my dad, being from Italy, our house was in the middle of the wrecking yard. So anyway, one day I went out in the back and I went in this car, and there was this huge pile of car magazines. And I don't remember the name of them. This was like in 48 or 49. So there was it was mostly sprint cars and round cars, but there was a few hot rods in it. And so, and then my dad had two friends. He gave me a 40 Chevy or 37 Chevy, whatever it was, without a motor in it. He gave me a motor, and he said, get it running. So I actually thought it was going to be my car. And I got the motor in it, and I got it running. I got the motor in it, and I didn't know how to wire, where the wires went. So one day, these two brothers came over, and my dad told me, ask them two guys over there, they'll show you how to wire it. Well, it was the Stanton brothers, Al and Leroy Stanton, and they both had hot rods. Al had a 29 Roadster, Leroy had a 34 Chevy Coupe. And he also had a 37 Chevy two-door sedan custom. So anyway, they showed me where the generator wire went and the coil wire, and I got the car running, and then my dad sold it. And kind of disappointed me because he said, here, this is your car, get it running. So then he gave me a 37 Ford slapback two-door sedan. And I think I put a motor in that too. So anyway, he kept selling my cars. But going back to these books, I sat in that car for a week going through every page of those Motor Trend or whatever book it was. And so when these two brothers came over, I asked them, well, what do I do? And they said, well, get a 32 frame and a 29 Roadster body, or any Roadster, I wanted a 29 because all the books showed mostly Bonneville cars, and they were all 29 Roadsters because of the small cowl. So anyway, I got a 29 Roadster, and I went in the back, and I tipped over probably the cheeriest 32 Ford 5-window coupe on the planet. But I mean, it wasn't that old of a car back then. And I cut the frame off of it, just destroyed all the fenders and everything. But I cut the frame off of it and had the frame fall down on all four wheels, and it still had the 32 motor and everything in it. So we had a 31 Model A Roadster body in the back. So I put that on my 32 frame. Well, the Model A frames were flat, and the 32 frame had the hump in the back. And I didn't know what to do because I had about a foot gap in the between the body and the frame, and I called up the two brothers, and they said, "Well, you got to cut out the trunk." So anyway, that was my first street rod. And then we got a 29 Roadster in, and that's what I really wanted. So I changed the bodies on that, and then that was my high school car.
A Roadster was your high school car?
Yeah, but I mean, it was a piece of junk, boy. So then afterward, after I graduated, I went to work for FH State Chevrolet in Oakland and started earning money. And I had the entire front end chromed for the Roadster, and I hid it under my bed for like 6 or 7 months. I mean, I was afraid to tell my folks I spent $70 to have a front end chromed. Anyway, once I started working at FH Daily and earning a salary, a real salary, I started fixing it up. And then when I went into service, when I got drafted, my mom had them two brothers, Al and Leroy, put it in the Grand National Roadster Show, and it won America's Most Beautiful Roadster. So
I saw that award, Rich. You actually were in the service when that award was handed out?
Yes, I was in Germany, and my mom telegraphed me and told me that I had won the 10-foot trophy. So that was exciting. But I couldn't tell anybody about it because nobody cared. I was the only hot rod guy in the whole company. And that's how I met Larry Huff, too.
Oh, really?
Became my in a few top fuel cars and stuff.
Yeah. Was
in the service. We were in basic training, and he had a hot rod magazine on his bed. And he was a smart ass even back then. And I says, "Can I look at your hot rod magazine?" And he says, what do you think? You're a hot rodder? Well, just before I got drafted was the 1959 was the Bakersfield race. And then the following week they ran at Kingdom Drag Strip, and I won a street roadster, and my name was in Hot Rod magazine. And in that deal, I says, as a matter of fact, I am. And I showed him my name where I won A Street. Anyway, that was, so then he was my big buddy. So, and then when we got out of the service, I built the Pure Hell car, and I would take it to San Diego and stay over at his house and run in Southern California, and Dale would drive down and drive the car because he was working.
So I gotta ask you, Rich, before you get to the Pure Hell, you actually drove a few dragsters before you built the Pure Hell car, correct?
Yes, and fuel alters.
Okay.
I didn't drive it very many times, but I did drive the Quality Auto Parts fuel altered. In fact, my mom never read the sports page in her life, but for some reason, she looked at the paper and she saw our name in the sports page, and it was that I was driving this Quality Auto car, and we set a record or something, I don't remember. And boy, did she blow up after I spent 2 years in the hospital from that accident and depleting their life savings, because at the time NHRA only had $3,000 insurance.
Wow.
So
that accident that you had, Rich, I'm assuming that, I mean, I've read accounts of it, and it was pretty serious, but you survived it. But I'm assuming things weren't completely normal with you after that, were they?
Yeah, they came, everything. Luckily, I had a 50 Pontiac rear end in it, and the pinion sat offside to one side. So when the rear end came back, the pinion was off to one side, and it mostly got my left leg and went in between the important parts in my leg. So, but it did take out my some internal parts
Yeah.
that I had to have many operations to get those working again.
So your mom, I can see why she probably wasn't too
Yeah,
thrilled about that.
yeah. Well, anyway, when she saw when she's, you talk about a pissed off Portuguese.
Were you able to drive the fuel altered very much after the accident, or
No, because that's when she saw my name in the paper.
she's the one that put an end to it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I only drove it a few times. It was too fast.
Yeah.
And I was still, it took me years to get to be able to walk right and all of them kind of things. So
Was Dale Emery the first guy to sit in the seat after you stopped running it, or was there somebody else in there?
This guy Fred Cerruti that owned Quality Auto Parts.
Okay.
And he told me I thought he was going to be the driver, and then he told me that he had a wife and kids after he drove it a few times, and that he didn't think he could drive the car anymore because he was afraid it would, it was 92-inch wheelbase with the motor in the sky, and so
That
then
original one, that was a small block Chevy, right? That you had in there?
Yes. Well, so I had known Dale from the races. He had a Top Fuel car, and he had a machine shop in Richmond where I would go over there at night and work on the heads. And then one day he says, I can make you a head gasket for that thing that you'll never have to change, a copper head gasket. So he made me a set of copper head gaskets by hand for my Chevy motor. And so then we were at the races. I asked him to drive the Roadster anyway, just one time. And he got in the car, and the car never ran quicker than a 760, I think. And he ran a 740 the first run in the car. His dragster didn't run for beans. So he parked that and started driving my car.
Well, I've seen pictures of that early car, and that engine is way up in the air.
Yeah, it wheel stood as many times as it made runs, I think. I mean, the front end, it would come off the ground in the lights a feet or foot or so.
Yeah, there's been a lot of launch pictures that I've seen taken of that car, and it's quite something coming off the line. That had a full spring suspension and everything in the front of it too?
Well, yeah, I had at first it started with a cross spring, and then when we turned it over and it went in that creek, when we put it back together, I had seen coil-over shocks, and I thought that would be neat. So I got, I can't remember the name of them, but anyway, they were for the back end of cars, and they were, they had springs on them, So what I did, there was a spring place in Oakland. I went down there, and I had them recoil me springs. And I kept getting different weight per inch springs till I got the ones that worked best on the car.
It's a neat look. I mean, it really, putting those coil springs on there is all. It just made it's so unique to see that.
Yeah, yeah.
So that you talked about, Dale Emery. Where was that? Was that at Fremont where you guys rolled that thing in the ditch and Emery was caught in there? There's a Steve Reyes photograph of that floating around out there.
Yeah.
Was he? Did he have trouble getting out of that car?
Well, yeah, because it was upside down in the water,
How
and
did
we
he get
were
out of
trying
it?
to pull him out without taking his seat belts off. Finally, we decided we better turn the car over. He's going to die. So we turned the car over, and then Tony lifted him out of the car, and he told us later that he held his breath and he could see his goggles filling up from the wrong way. That's how he figured out he was upside down, because he didn't really know he was upside down in the water. But he had holes drilled on top of his goggles so they wouldn't fog up, and they were filling up from the wrong way. So then they take him to the hospital, and I go to the hospital, and they release him, and they try to keep me there because I was a nervous wreck, man. I mean, I was shaking like a leaf. He was my best friend. I didn't know if he was hurt or not, because they took him away in an ambulance, even though I saw him standing. Oh, another thing was, the ambulance guy was trying to get his helmet off without unbuckling it. And then, so Tony just walks over, knocks the guy out, Tony Del Rio. And so, and Tony was 6'5", and he weighed 250 or 300 pounds, and he was a professional wrestler, and he was all muscle at that time. So he knocks the guy out. So afterward, we get back to the strip, the ambulance driver comes back, and he wants to find out who hit him. We told him, it's best you just leave it alone. just mark it up as an experience. So he never did go after Tony.
Well, tough group of guys you used to hang around with back then. Is Southern California running altereds down there? The racing scene, can you tell me about it? I mean, you used to have 16 car altered events at like Orange County and places.
Yeah. In fact, when I won the first Grand Prix at Irwindale, and that was first $1,000 race that I know of for alters. And it came down to the last one. It came down was us and Willie Borsch. Well, I beat up Willie Borsch a whole bunch of times with that Chevrolet, and this is the first time I ever had the first time out with the Chrysler motor, and we were running like 760s. We go to race Willie, and I go over to Tommy Allen, and I says, Tommy, how much mag lead do you run in your dragster, and what's a blower over drive? And I was running it kind of like a Chevrolet, and I didn't hardly have any blower over drive, and I didn't have any mag in it. And so I upped the blower over drive, and I put the mag at 45. And we go out there and we ran, I don't remember what we ran, but I remember we ran 207, and that was faster miles per hour than any car, any alternate had ever gone. So my wife and Dale's wife were sitting behind these three women who were, they didn't know who they were, but they had something to do with Willie's cars. I don't know if they were wives or daughters or who they were. And they were saying that we sandbagged all weekend to embarrass Willie in the final, but hell, I had no idea what I was doing. So that was the first time out with the Roadster. I mean, with the Chrysler.
So there was another car that, what the hell was the name of it? Pure Heaven? You guys had Pure Hell. What was the name of that car? Was it Pure Heaven? Yes, Pure Heaven was actually the Anaheim Speed Engineering car. And so when they built a new car and I don't know if they always ran a big block, but anyway, they built a new car with a big block in it. And they thought they would name it Pure Heaven. They thought it would help get
match races or something. But I was pissed when I said, "Oh yeah, no problem, guys," But I was pissed for a couple of years because after they named there's pure heaven, then there was pure purgatory, and then between heaven and hell, and I mean there was all kinds of different things that guys made up off of my pure heaven name. Yeah, but Fitzgerald was a great guy, and we were actually great friends, and actually one of the first guys, if not the first guy that I met when I went to Southern California for the first time.
Well, that at that point yet, the NHRA still had the fuel altered class on their national events, right? Did you guys go to some of the national events?
Yes, we did, but not very many because the national events they put us in an ET bracket.
Oh,
so the last altered I ran at them days was Indianapolis, and Seuss had that brand new car with all the funny car suspension and the motor way back, and it ran like 620s or 610 or something right off the get-go, and I was running like 630s or something like that. So he beat us at Indy, and then coming home, Dale rolled the truck and trailer, and that's when I took the motor out of the altered and I put it in the Proud American funny car. So the first night out with my motor and the Proud American, we ran Long Beach and we were runner-up, and I remember we got $750 for runner-up. Well, hell, that was twice the amount I would win with an altered race, So that's when I thought I'd build my first funny car, which burned to the ground on the first or second run.
Oh no!
Oh yeah.
Did anybody get hurt in that?
No, what happened was I ran the motor just like I took it out of the altered. Well, the funny car put more strain on the motor and it leaned it out, so it hurt a piston, and we didn't have double-sided headers at them days, and so when it hurt a piston, it turned the pan into full of air, compressed air in the valve cover gaskets, and all the oil would get on the headers, and you'd have a fire. I mean, it was a pretty common deal. And so he hit the fire bottles, but then when he got down to the end, he lifted the body up and the fire flared up. And I mean, it burnt the wheels off of the car.
Well, it was that Dale Emery driving too then?
No, it was another friend of mine, Elwin Carlson, who drove Tony Del Rio's A-gas supercar, by that time Dale was moved to Texas. He took the Pure Hell car and went to Texas, and he liked it and stayed there. And so, so he stayed there, and he had a brand new home in Livermore, which is the neighboring little town, and he had two young kids, and just got a hair in his. He said he got married when he was like 15 or 16 years old, and he said that was the most fun he had ever had in his life when he went to Dallas with the Pure Hell car. And so he stayed there and went to work for Beetle at the trailer factory, Chaparral, and he drove different cars and then started driving the Blue Max. He first started out, he was going to be the driver and the crew chief both, because Beetle said that Dale could drive the car when when Beetle had business doings, but that never came about, and Dale just became a full-time crew chief. I used to ask Dale, how come you're so smart now? And when you drove for me, you were so dumb. But, he was, boy, he turned into being one hell of a crew chief. They won 3 funny car NHRA championships 3 years in a row.
Oh yeah, Waterbed Fred, Dale Emery. I mean that was a hell of a combination there. Them guys.
Yeah. And I worked on the car quite a bit too. They would fly me into for national events until D Gant came on board full time, and then he took over my right side of the motor.
Well, so you got the funny car, right? And how long did you guys run that funny car? Did you take it to national events too?
Yeah. In fact, we won Columbus with it.
Spring Nationals. What year was that? Do you remember?
Yeah, 71 or 2.
Okay.
70. Oh, my daughter just said 73. I didn't think it was that late.
Okay.
Anyway, we had 2 bodies on it. We had the Soapy Sales body, and we had the Pure Hell body.
Yep. I've seen pictures of the Soapy Sales body on it.
Huff paid everything. Gas for the truck, motels, and so when we ran national events, because it was out of state, and he had more money than I did, we always ran his body when we ran national events. So when we won Columbus, it was actually the Soapy Sales car, the Pure Hell car with a Soapy Sales body on it.
The first person that ever told me that, I did not know that, was actually it was Steve Reyes that told me that. He said, you do know that that's the Pure Hell chassis underneath that body, don't you? I'm like, I had no idea.
Yeah. We had we had a Mr. Ed body, Challenger body, and then I had a Demon body from, I don't remember the guys, but they were the big body guys back then, and they didn't have a Demon car, so they went to the airport and rented a Demon, and then they took a mold off of it and made my body.
Well, it's definitely a cool looking car. And I was I came across this list here of the people who actually sat in the seat of that car: Dave Beebe, Richard Tharp, Pat Foster. There's a couple of more people, but I mean, those people right there, 3, Dave Beebe, Richard Tharp, and Pat Foster. Wow. Those are some serious drivers right there. Tell me about Pat Foster. I never had the chance to meet Pat Foster in person. What kind of a guy was he? I heard he was a no bullshit kind of guy.
Oh yeah, but he was a great driver, and he could tell you foot by foot of what the car was doing on the whole run. He'd say 200 feet out, it did this, and 300 feet out, it did that. Where Dave Beebe was a good driver, but he couldn't tell you anything. And back there, without computers, it was important. The driver was very important with the tune-up.
Well, the driver was the computer.
Yeah, it was a computer. So, yeah, Pat Foster was amazing.
Yeah.
Plus, what a craftsman. Holy cow.
Well,
he could build anything.
Yeah.
Unbelievable welder, unbelievable everything, boy.
Well, he piloted a lot of cars, but there's some of the restoration stuff that he did is some of the most memorable, some of the cars that he built, like the Pedregon car.
Yeah.
Well,
we used to
go ahead.
We ran Flamin' Frank a few times in match races, and they would put fire extinguishers all the way down the strip because it was pure hell against Flamin' Frank.
Somebody once told me that car, it's a beautiful car now, never looked that good back in the day.
It was a piece of crap, boy. Unbelievable. Yeah, it was. One time we was at Palmdale for opening day, when they first opened that drag strip there. And Frank was there, and one of his sons, I don't know which one, was sitting in the seat with the steering wheel, and Frank was working on the motor, and I don't know which son it was, but he'd pull the parachute would fall out. Frank would go in the back, pack the parachute, and then go work on the motor, and the kid would pop. He never said a word to the kid about not pulling the parachute. And then Frank would walk around the pits, and he'd say, "You got any pistons?" Because he would take pistons with holes in them and weld them up, or pistons with tight second rings. I don't know what he did with them, but he hit me over there pounding a piston in the motor because it was too big for the cylinder bore. And and that's how he ran that motor, and it ran as good as anybody, damn near, and with all used stuff.
That sounds like the early days of John Force out there, pulling stuff out of dumpsters.
Yeah.
You guys, stepped away from racing, but I saw a story that later on, I don't know if it was in the 80s or the 90s, where you actually, you know what, before we get to that, Rich, let's talk about some of the crews that you actually worked with. When I was talking to Gibbs, he told me something I never knew about you. You actually worked with Dan Pastorini at one point. I did not know that.
Yeah, for 3 years.
Wow. Was Donnie Couch with him at that point too?
Donnie Couch was with him the first 2 races. And then, Couch called me from Dallas and said they were going to be at Bakersfield the next weekend. They had a match race against Garlits, if I would come there and help them. And so then after that race, they said, well, we're next weekend or 2 weekends, we're going to be in where Moose had that drag strip, and that would flood when it rained. Oh, in Louisiana.
Down at Baton Rouge.
Yeah, Baton Rouge. So he says, would you come to Baton Rouge? So I said, yes. So we get to Baton Rouge, and Donnie and Pastorini get in this fierce fight. I mean, they weren't blowing blows, but they were sure screaming at each other. And so when Pastorini got to the hotel, they had a bowl of fruit waiting for him because he was still well known as the quarterback then. In fact, the name of the car was the Quarterback Sneak. So Donnie picked up the bowl of fruit and threw it across the room. It hit on the wall and shit went everywhere. And so Donnie just walked out and left. So I get to Louisiana, and it's just me and I think Tony Ledford. And so we did the car that weekend, just the 2 of us. And then the next weekend, they were going to go to Seattle. And I thought I was going to be crew chief. So we get to Seattle, and Tony had called Jim Persett and told Pastorini what a good crew chief he was. So he became the crew chief. And
that race in Baton Rouge, did you get, is that the year that Pastorini won that race in Baton Rouge? I think that's what it was, the Southern Nationals. We had to come back on a Monday. It was rained out or something, came back on a Monday and won the race.
It rained out all the time. No, that was when he first started running the car. The first 2 or 3 weeks was I can't think of his name either, but he was a pretty well-known guy, and he did the motors and tuning when Pastorini had drag race boats. Yeah. And so they had a jet boat, and the motor blew on the last run it ever made. And with no steering in a jet boat, when the motor goes, you ain't got no steering. And so it went up on the beach and it killed a couple of people. And so that was his crew chief the first few times that they ran the car, and he was the crew chief when they won that summer nationals.
Okay.
And for the life of me, I can't think of his name either, but he was pretty well known as a driver and tuner both.
Well, Dan Pastorini was one of them guys that I remember watching on, TV, of course, watching the national events, but he never really, I mean, he was there, but he never really had big success other than that one national event win, I think. How the hell did he ever even fit in a car? Wasn't the guy like 6'5" or 6'6"?
Yeah. Well, in the first car was a Gene Snow car.
Okay.
The first car actually was that guy that had that Flying Red or something, that airplane that won all the speed races.
Oh, yeah. I know who you're talking about.
Right. And it was a Yahara car, and it was built for Yahara.
Okay.
And he bought that car and he couldn't fit in it. Then he bought a car from Snow. And when I started going with him, it was a Gene Snow car. And then he had a Yahara, or I had Yahara build him a new car. I mean, he paid for it, but we had Yahara build him a new car because we went with Yahara because me and Yahara were big buddies. Yahara used to drove the funny car when I first came out with it.
Okay.
After Honker.
Well, so all right, you worked with Dan Pastorini a little bit. You already told us you worked with Raymond Beadle. Who else did you help out during that period of time?
Sid Waterman.
So
I actually drove the car too.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah. That's when Sid was up here. He hadn't gone to Southern California and worked for Mickey. And it wasn't the Clear Spark car or nothing like that. It was just, I don't even know who built the car, but it was a Top Fuel car, Slingshot.
So anyway, so at some point you aren't racing anymore. But I read a story that you came across the Pure Hell car, the original Pure Hell car, torn apart someplace, all chopped up, and you managed to get your hands on it. Tell me about that.
Well, actually, this friend of mine, he wasn't a friend of mine. The guy who worked for me, worked a counter. Him and this guy, Ed Haggerty, owned another wrecking yard, found the car, and they bought it and gave it to me for my birthday. And the the chassis had been cut in half, and it had a piece of tubing inside. It didn't have any outside tubing, but the tubing fit inside, and they were going to lengthen it like 20 inches because it was 92-inch wheelbase. And the body was broken in half too. And I think the body was broken in half because somebody stepped on it or something, but it wasn't cut in half. It was actually broke. So I got the car and I took it to Pete, and Pete kind of restored it. And at that time, Pete was drinking quite a bit, and I shouldn't have taken it there. The roll bar came out crooked, and it wasn't the best. So this other friend of mine, Ted Ingersoll, straightened the car out, and we ran it for I don't know how many years before Yahara built this car. And this car's 106-inch wheelbase. It's a pretty short car too.
Yeah.
And it's gone 245. And well, we've never tried to run into fives, but it's gone low 5.9, I think 592. It snuck in there into the fives a few times by mistake, because that Alter deal is a 6.0. So when you're trying to run a 6.06 or 6.05, a low 6.0, it's bound to sneak in there once, sometime or another.
Well, I've seen the car run many times, and I got to tell you, I don't know how Brian Hopes was running it the last few years here, and I tell you what, I don't know how he handles that. Wow.
Yeah, and the first run he did in it was 6:30, and it carried the wheels halfway down, and he never lifted. I don't. He When I got down there, he said, "Well, hell, I didn't even know the front end was off the ground." But I mean, it was one of them stab and steer and hold on to your butt first run.
Well, something I want to ask you about. I try to ask everybody about this. Long Beach, Lions drag strip.
Yeah,
What was it like out there? I mean, I like to get everybody's interpretation
yeah.
of that drag strip.
Well, we loved it. Let me tell you, we ran there me and Dale would drive up here from Northern California we'd drive all night Friday night and to get there, and we'd run the beach, and then on the way home we'd either run San Gabriel or we'd drive all night and run Fremont, because Fremont runs Sunday. So yeah, the beach was wonderful, and what was really neat about it was the fuel cars. They're parked about halfway down, and then you pushed out, and then pushed towards the starting line, and that was great, because if you was the first car, hell, we just pushed the car right up to the edge of the drag strip. So Dale would keep saying, "Push me out a little farther. I still can't see." He wanted to watch the races. Well, I mean, we'd be right at the edge of the drag strip, and I mean, CJ would just keep running them down through there. Yeah, I saw. It was like almost every weekend somebody got killed there.
Yeah.
Man, it was so slick. The first guy I saw was my hero was Penny. God damn it. He had a fuel altered, but he got killed in the top fuel car there. He had a telephone pole at the end.
Oh,
Boyd Pennington.
There you go. Yep. I know what you're talking. Yep.
In fact, he had the record in National Dragster, and his wife worked for Doris, and they kept him having the record for like 2 years in National Dragster. After we broke the record, they wouldn't put us as the record holder. They kept him, Boyd, in there.
Well, I see that his car, it's been out at Nitro Revival the last few years here. I see that car has been restored and turned into a cackle car now. I don't know if that thing can actually run.
His sons.
Is that who has it? His son now?
Yeah, his sons did that. Repopped it.
Yeah. It's a neat looking car.
Nice guys too.
Well, the only reason I ask about Long Beach Lions drag strip is because it's one of those, I mean, it was the track in Southern California. It was the place everybody wanted to go race. And I was too young to know anything about it. I was only 5 years old when that place closed. So I wish I would have had the chance to go there.
When that dude came in, boy, she was a slick sucker, man.
Somebody said the fog down at the far end too. You couldn't even see the where you were at down there with the lighting and everything.
Oh no! Once you couldn't even see the strip. It wasn't lit up that good back then. And it was. You'd get down to the end. You wouldn't know where your car was at. You'd have to hunt for your car on the return road till you found it. But we all loved it. I'll tell you.
Well, speaking of Lions,
and San Fernando too.
Yeah, Lions. My wife and I are heading out to Vegas in a couple of weeks here. Actually, we're going to hang out with Joe Schubeck and Gigi for a few days, and then we're going to jump in a car and run up by Larry Sutton up in Utah and spend a night with him up there and talk about Lions drag strip probably the whole time we're there.
I mean, he was there every night. I mean, every Saturday night.
He's a cool dude.
He'd help you out quite a bit too. He knew how to run that starting line, boy.
Yeah.
Yep. Him and that black hat he always wore.
Good guys wear black hats, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Well, so I come across another article, while doing my research here, which I
yeah,
do. I come across another article that was dated 2015 that said Rich Guasco is stepping away from racing. He's not racing anymore.
yeah.
Well, I've seen you down at Beach Bend the last couple of years here. So what happened between then and there?
I don't know. Well, when Pastorini deal was over, I was done, and then we redid the roaster. We ran it a few times, and then, well, actually for a couple of years, and then I wasn't going to run it anymore. And that's when I said I was done, but that didn't last very long.
I,
Yeah,
I think that's one of the things Gibbs says to me. He goes, "That guy's always thinking about the next race. He never stops thinking
yeah,
about it."
yeah,
So tell me about Brian Hope. Tell us who Brian Hope is for the people out here that don't know who he is.
yeah. Well, his dad has the Rat Trap fuel altered, and I would see him I met him going to the races and racing against his dad's actually from Southern California. He had a dragster, injected nitro dragster when he lived down here. And his brother Steve still is here, and Bill Street Rods and stuff has a shop in Gardena. Bill Street Rod. Anyway, they seemed like a nice family, and I was tired of asshole drivers, and I wanted a guy who was married and had kids and was a nice person. And I thought Brian Hope was that before I knew him. No, he's a great guy and a hell of a driver. And you couldn't ask for anybody better. The only thing you could be better if he weighed like 150 pounds or something instead of 230. But other than that, he says it's why the car runs so quick and fast, because his fat ass is is on top of the rear end. And so, yeah, and his dad's his whole family, his mother, his dad, his wife, his kids, they're all, and he bought Brian bought a couple of years ago. A guy that built cabinets inside of trailers and cabinets for everybody. So Brian bought that, and now all of his daughter, his son, everybody works there. His wife, him, and I think he has one or two other employees, but it's mostly family.
Yeah.
And he's like increased the business 10 times over what the prior owner was doing.
Well, I saw Ron was down, with the Rat Trap was down at Bowling Green last couple of years too. I saw Ron down there. I talked to him a little bit this last year, and he's still sharp as a tack too. He's a pretty cool dude. I like that guy.
Who's that?
Ron Hope.
Oh yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah, he was down there.
Yeah. And he has a great Bonneville car too.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, they both do. They both have modified roadsters. I think Ron's car is a front motored roadster, and Brian's car is a rear engine roadster, or vice versa. I don't remember.
His wife has a nice one too.
Pardon?
Ron's wife has.
And then Ron's wife has a Bonneville car too.
Okay, so I got to ask you, did you ever run Bonneville? I mean, it seems like drag racing, Bonneville, Salt Flats, it all kind of goes together.
No, I drove at El Mirage though, but I've been to Bonneville quite a few times, but I never was, I was always drag racing, and I never was motivated enough to build a car, even though I thought about it a few times.